I'm grateful to you, Presiding Officer, for the chance to contribute to this debate, and like Angela Constance, I'm going to focus principally on flooding and the issues that arise from that, which is a clear part of the report before us. I think it's a very good report, like others have said. I think it's very clear. It sets out very worthwhile recommendations in a variety of ways, which, if implemented, and the Minister's indicated he wants to do that, I'm sure will improve the situation. I think the report also catalogues very well the current situation that exists and what works well. There are very many strengths in what happens today, but also the report, I think, very helpfully highlights quite a number of weaknesses in current practice that require to be addressed. Now, my interest in this arises from the part I played, or took, I should say, as a committee member when we scrutinised the flooding bill last year in this Parliament. During the course of that bill, we received a lot of evidence from people affected in the way that Angela Constance described by flooding about their concern that they were not clear as to who was responsible, who was in charge in certain situations, and what particular roles were people responsible for, what were they not responsible for, when were they responsible for it, when were they not responsible for it. All that came out in evidence, and indeed that resulted in an amendment to the bill by John Scott from the Conservative benches, which sought to create a new responsibility for chief fire officers. And in part of the discussion around that amendment, on a cross-party basis, I should say, because it did have cross-party support, there was an understanding that this report that the Minister had commissioned, or was about to commission, would cover the issue of flooding quite fully within it. I'm glad that has happened. Flooding, as we all know, can be a traumatic event for those involved, a life-changing event, and it is only, as a set of incidents, going to increase because of the climate change that we are seeing, higher water rainfall, higher precipitation, more intense rainfall at certain times of the year, and that is inevitably going to increase the amount of flooding that we have in this country into the future. And therefore, getting the support services right in that regard is a very important part of public policy and an important part of how we improve the life chances of our fellow citizens. Now, this report recommendations would help get all of that right, and that's why I support many of the recommendations here. The first point in the flooding section highlights ministers' accountability in this regard too, for proper arrangements across the whole of Scotland. And currently, Paddy Tompkins reports an insufficient collection of data of the local plans that exist across the country. And I'd be interested to hear the Minister's intentions with regard to that when he sums up at the end of the debate. The report also highlights various weaknesses in current understanding of the roles and the responsibilities and the arrangements that are in place presently. And let me quote a few of those weaknesses that Paddy Tompkins refers to. He says there's a variable understanding of the role, the remit and authority of the strategic coordinating groups, and that this goes to the heart of the question of who is in charge. And he recommends there should be further dialogue, further discussion between the Resilience Directorate of the Scottish Government, which the Minister referred to, but also that Resilience Directorate and COSLA, ACPOS, SOLACE and the Chief Fire Officers. And again, when the Minister sums up, I would invite him to say what he's doing to facilitate that further discussion that's been recommended. And Paddy Tompkins also recommends and records that only 14 local authorities responded to the consultation phase of his work. And some of those 14, he comments, gave detailed and helpful comments, the implication being that some didn't. And indeed, he records that some made no comment at all about these issues. And he also records that there are widely varying types of staff dealing with the issues in local authorities. And he concludes that does not convey a sense of consistency, shared understanding of the challenges between the local authorities. And he then goes on to state that for effective coordination to take place, there must be some clear executive authority. And he promotes a memorandum of understanding between the constituent authorities as one way of achieving that. And indeed, he refers to the Northern Constabulary's work around the Caledonian Canal, which John Farquhar Munro referred to, and how they have got a memorandum of understanding between them, which improves people's abilities to comprehend between the agencies and in public who is responsible for what. And again, I'd be interested if the Minister thinks that does provide a model for other parts of the country. Now, Given the degree of uncertainty regarding executive leadership that Paddy Tompkins talks about, he recommends, number 4 recommendation, the 4th recommendation, that the focus of those discussions I have referred to should be for clarification, development and more effective promulgation of the Responding to Emergencies section of Preparing Scotland, which is the strategic report about our safety. Now, all of that discussion should be designed to meet the widely expressed need for a manual or a doctrine and operations for the strategic coordinating groups. And he makes it very clear in his report that this should assist understanding, enhance operational effectiveness and, critically in my view, inform public understanding of who is in charge of what and at when during flooding incidents. And he also backs the Chief Fire Officers having a lead role in coordinating water and flood rescue. But he makes it very clear that that should be within the strategic coordinating groups and it should be led by the police, as is the current position. And he highlights the need to bring further clarity as to the respective organisational roles. And again, I hope that is going to happen as part of the process of explaining better to everybody what this is all about. But he also fires a warning shot across the bows of COSLA and ACPOS and the Chief Fire Officers, who are already revisiting coordination arrangements. And he makes a plea that they should not create any shift from the current situation where police receive and coordinate responses and call for help, as happens at present. And again, I'd be grateful for the Minister's observations on that particular point in his summing up. Now, all of this, Presiding Officer, points to this having been a very worthwhile review, having picked up the issues that were picked up in the flooding bill consideration, highlighting clear weaknesses, highlighting strengths, but also making recommendations for the way forward. On 2 final points, if I can, very briefly. I also share the view about the asset register expressed by James Kelly and Angela Constance. And I also want to draw attention to the bits in the report about training, where he observes upon very good practice in, I think, Lothian and Borders in relation to the Tweed. But I would say, and I know that the FBU feel this very strongly from previous debates we've had, there's always a need to invest in training. No matter how good it is today, we need to do better and to invest in that in the future. And again, I hope the Minister will pick that up in his response. I welcome the report, Presiding Officer, and I look forward to what the Minister's got to say in responding.